Have you ever noticed that the same drive that you're using right now to build your company could also be quietly dismantling your marriage? Most entrepreneurs, they are publicly married but privately divorced, crushing it in public, but the relationship at home is crumbling. There's a dangerous myth that high believers believe, dangerous myth that you believe, is that if I just make enough money and provide wealth for my family, my marriage will take care of itself. You don't build your company by accident, and you won't build a thriving marriage by accident either. Estée Lauder stood at the exact crossroads many of you are in right now. She later said, "Success is not worth losing the one person who believes in me before you even believed in yourself." Have you ever noticed that the same drive that you're using right now to build your company could also be quietly dismantling your marriage? What's up, everyone? I am your coach, Coach Kess, and I'm super excited about today's episode because we're jumping into some untold stories. And today we're exploring an untold story of one of the greatest beauty empires and their marriage that almost didn't survive. And most entrepreneurs, they are publicly married but privately divorced. Now, what does that look like? It looks like we see their highlight reels and we're like, click, like, and we like it on the outside, but privately, it's chaos. Privately, behind the scenes, they don't even like each other. It's really the show, even being together for the kids. And so they are crushing it in the boardroom, they're crushing it in public, but the relationship at home is crumbling. And so if you ever got caught up, and let me know if this is you, if you've ever got caught up asking yourself or telling yourself, I'm doing this for the family, that might be you, my friend, right? Where you're barely seeing them, you and your spouse feel more like roommates versus soulmates. This paradox is already at work in your life. And this is what we're going to be jumping into today, because what's fascinating about it is that this isn't about choosing between business and marriage. It's really, how does it come together? It's finding that fundamental truth, the skill that builds empires and doesn't automatically build thriving marriage, right? So most entrepreneurs are publicly married but privately divorced. Now, to me, this is heavy, because if you're publicly married, we see a highlight reel, and publicly divorced, that means you and your wife don't even like each other. Then why pretend? So they're crushing it in the boardroom while their relationship at home is crumbling. That doesn't make sense to me. I don't know if I'm just that type of guy. I can't just see something crumbling and not say anything about it, or be a phony and be outside acting like everything is good, but inside, like, I don't even like the person that I'm with. To me, that's crazy. If you've ever caught yourself working late for the family, and I put that in quotes, and now I got to do air quotes for you guys. If you're doing this for the family while barely seeing them, or if your spouse feels more like a roommate than a soulmate, this paradox is already at work in your life. Now, I understand people go through seasons of life where you may feel more like a roommate than a soulmate because you guys are navigating some things in your marriage or in your relationship. That is 1000% acceptable, acceptable. Who am I to judge? It doesn't matter to me. But I think it's normal is what I'm saying, because I've been a part of so many groups, married groups, and talked to people and interviewed people who've been married for 50 years, 40 years. Even my parents been married for 30 plus years. And I think it's a seasonal thing where you have to readjust and refocus on why you guys are married. But if this isn't even a conversation that you guys have, then I can totally understand why this paradox would be in your life. So let's go back here. What's fascinating is that this isn't about choosing a business or a marriage. It's about understanding the fundamental truth. The skills that building businesses empires, the skill that builds business empires doesn't automatically build a thriving marriage. In fact, they're sometimes the opposite. This is a fact because a lot of people are so great, and think about it, right? This is what's so crazy to me. You're great at leading 10, 20, hundreds, thousands of people for bigger companies, millions of people, but you're not good at leading your wife. You're not good at leading your kids. Like, to me, that just doesn't make sense. And so, because a lot of the things are fundamentally the same, but it doesn't translate the same. So let's go back. So by the end of this time of you and I being on this podcast together, you would understand why success might be creating distance between your marriage, which is what happens to most of you guys. And more importantly, you'll discover a proven framework from one of history's most successful entrepreneurial couples to both build an empire and legacy worth marriage. So these people that we're going to explore later today, they have built, I believe it's like in the 40 something billion dollars. They were married in the 90s. They've now passed on. Their legacy still goes today. And I believe that's what we all want to do. We all want to leave a legacy. And what if you could leave a legacy that also translates and is passed down to your kids? Because you and your wife didn't screw it up. Right, and that's essentially what we're going to be talking about today. There's a dangerous myth that high believers believe, dangerous myth that you believe, is that if I just make enough money and provide wealth for my family, my marriage will take care of itself. Guys, I can't tell you how many times I've heard this. Like, I just want to make enough money. I just got to go out and get this deal and listen, it just makes it worse, because here's what I know for a fact, right? When your wife, husband, whoever is listening, when that person goes out and you're removed from them, and because of the business, they now have an association of the business now taking you away from them. So how is it when they get the money, you think they're going to be happy? They're going to see that money and almost look at it like a blood diamond. They're like, they don't want it. And so all of the things that you've worked for, when you realize that they're not happy, you end up thinking that they're ungrateful because you're out there busting your butt, doing all of these things for them, but they didn't ask you for it. You're trying to fulfill your own traumas. You're trying to fix your own traumas, and you're using your family as a scapegoat to do it. Now, this is what happens to most of you. This is just what happens. And so let's jump back in. Let me ask you, how is that working out? Huh? How is all of the long hours and telling your family that I'm doing this for y'all, but you miss the football games, but you miss date night? How is it actually working out for you? See, the truth is, marriage isn't a transactional or an investment that runs on autopilot. It don't work like that. There are some things I do believe it's an investment, but it don't run on autopilot. Or like a separate business that needs its own vision, systems, and daily operations. This is what I fundamentally believe. Your marriage needs systems, vision, and daily operations. And we're going to tie this all in at the end. Like, if you've never looked at one of my episodes, my previous episodes where I break down run your marriage like a business, hold on. I got you. I'm going to break that down for you. See, you don't build your company by accident. you won't build a thriving marriage by accident either. I'm gonna run that back. You don't build your company by accident, and you won't build a thriving marriage by accident either. Listen, you don't wake up one day and have a business that you're proud of, that's generating revenue, right? And you don't have to upkeep. I'm not saying that you can't make money with a one night wonder thing. You got lucky and you made money. Sure, you could make money quick, but running a business with employees and like it don't work like that, right? It don't work like that. And it's the same principle for when you are in a marriage. You're not gonna wake up one day and just have a marriage that just works. It don't work like that. And so here's an example. It's kind of like when you're building your dream house, but your foundation is cracked. Would you build a dream house and your foundation is cracked? Like, it doesn't make sense, because the more you start to build and that foundation, the crack in the foundation starts opening up, then it's just gonna fall apart. And see, we know this fundamentally, but you don't realize that your marriage is a part of your foundation. The taller you go, the stronger your foundation needs to be. And that's the reason why I love to use the example of the Burj Khalifa. What I find happen to most people when they're working on their marriage or when they're building their business and neglecting their marriage, that's the equivalent of trying to build your Burj Khalifa that's 2,700 feet in the air with a single family foundation that's 4 feet down. Bro, it ain't gonna work. By the time you get up to like a few feet, like not even 100 feet, that whole thing coming down. That's the reason why when any wind blows, things start to happen in your marriage, because you're building this thing, this Burj Khalifa, on a single family foundation. And so when things start happening in your marriage, when somebody says something on the outside, or if something happens, like those issues start coming up in your marriages because the foundation ain't that deep. But anyway, we haven't even really dove in yet. I'm just trying to share with you what I got on my heart. So just to clarify, what's your plan? What is your plan? Because we've already identified that you're building legacy, right? And again, this isn't a don't do that. It's what you do when you're building legacy. And I've already said what you do is you go down in your foundation. So let's talk about some of the things that happens when we don't build this foundation. Time. Years of connection you'll never get back. Oof. This is major, because what most people say is, all I need is a few years, right? All I need is a few years to build a business and everything is going to be okay. While your wife is building up resentment over the same time, right? And God forbid she sees somebody else that's giving her the time that you're not giving her. And I say God forbid, but these are just facts and realities, because somebody else is going to give her the same time that you don't want to give her. And so you don't get this time back. You're not ever going to be as young as you are in listening to this podcast right now, ever. So what are you going to do? Right? So time, that's our most valuable asset. You lose that. Another thing is identity. Becoming is a success story, but a relationship failure. So you're becoming this person, and your identity, when your relationship fails, the hit to your identity that you feel, oh man. And so when I got divorced, I had to rebuild who I was, because we all have this vision as to how we see our lives with our family, our kids, and all of that. And so imagine that vision being dismantled. Imagine that vision, that Burj Khalifa comes falling down, where you no longer have this family anymore because you weren't present. And so now you're doing this identity work. You got to see yourself as something different, because not even something different as like what happens when, because you were married, people know you to be married, and now you got to rebuild. And I'm not saying it's impossible. Is that a life you choose? Which is the reason for this podcast. You don't have to choose it. Learn from my experience. Don't be the idiot that just says, oh, I want to have my own experience. Learn from wisdom of people who have done the thing that you haven't done yet. And hopefully that's divorce. And if you've been divorced, don't do it again. That's plain stupidity. Another thing that happens is money. Like, if you have a divorce, that's automatically 50%. It's automatically 50% of what you got right now. I mean, I've told a story on my Facebook some time ago that there was a brother who paid 75%, 75% to divorce. Like, this is nothing to play with. Like, why would you want to do that? Another thing that you ends up costing you. Another thing that having a unhealthy relationship or divorce ends up costing you is a lot of energy. Like, it's an energy suck. Even when you're in a relationship, like, any of you, have you ever been in a marriage or relationship and you and your wife, y'all are not on the same page, and all you could do is think about and have the conversation in your head. You replay, you have all of these conversations in your head, but you never have the conversations in person. Have that ever happened to you? Now think about this, right? Because here's where I want you to quantify it. What could you have been doing with that brain space? Because a lot of times you end up snapping out of it and realizing that, oh, I'm having this whole conversation with my wife and nobody's here. And so you call it daydreaming, or, that's time away from being focused on something that could actually move the needle forward in your personal life, in your business. You choose, but that's time taken away. And so sometimes you can't get things done simply because of how occupied your mind and energy is. And so that's a huge cost. Your reputation. Your kids will never see you the same, ever. Especially if you got more grown kids. My ex-wife and I, when we got divorced, my son he wasn't even 1 yet when we separated. And so he kind of grew up with this normal, although I talk to him and I tell him this is not normal, but we still have that conversation. And so your reputation, and there's still a reputation that I have to have a conversation with him for, because when we have the conversation of what's normal, and then the question comes up, well, Dad, why did it not work? That's a conversation him and I have. Maybe I'll post it on here, but it's a full conversation that him and I have been able to have a couple of years ago. I like addressing these things. I don't want this to stay in his mind. But your reputation as a dad, as a mom, as somebody that knows how to commit, because then they're going to go out of, when they go into the world for themselves, are they actually going to know how to commit themselves? Because they haven't seen it modeled. And if you want to know the life of someone, just understand the sins of the father. So important. That's how you can understand you. Like, the reason why you're doing what you're doing right now is possibly because of something that you've seen good modeled before you, or something that you're trying to avoid. This is just a fact for every single person's life. And now, so today, I want to share with you how one of the most successful entrepreneurial couples lost everything that mattered. Their story perfectly demonstrates this success paradox, and most importantly, how to solve it. And so the person that we're going to be diving into today is called Estée Lauder. Estée Lauder. Now, if you don't know the brand Estée Lauder, you probably know the brand MAC. especially if you're married, right? Like Mac or Clinique, and like all of those companies are owned by Estee Lauder. And so I want to jump in to her story, because what I have in my notes here is that in 1939, Estee Lauder stood at the exact crossroads many of you are in right now. Her beauty business was gaining momentum. She was ambitious, she was driven, and focused on growth. But her marriage to Joseph Lauder was suffering under the same weight of her ambition. Now, the reason why I'm highlighting this is because I was reading Estee Lauder's, I was reading her biography, and these were some key things that came out, and it made me realize that there are great people who came before us, who has figured this out so that you and I could learn from it, and we don't have to figure it out alone. And so here they are going through some of the same things that you're going through right now. And so here's the breaking point. Estee Lauder later reflected, and this is now I quote, "I was young and restless. I thought I was missing out on life." Oh my bejesus. Guys, have you ever felt like you've been missing out on life, where your wife you kind of feel like your wife is keeping you back? Like, let's be honest. Just yesterday, I had somebody saying that how their person they feel like their person is keeping them back. And some people try to use the Bible to justify all of this, but here it is. She is saying that she felt like she was missing out on life because she was a hustler. She was a grinder. She was doing everything that she wanted to do, but she felt like she was being kept back by her husband. And so this led them to separation. Think about that. Her feeling like she was missing out on life. Now, guys, nothing to me is surface level, so you're going to get a lot of breakdowns here. What does missing out on life really mean, right? Missing out on life really means that I potentially see, it's not real yet, but I potentially see a future for me that hasn't happened yet that makes me have anxiety that I am missing out on something that I don't have anymore. But here's the great thing, because that could work for you, right? Like, it's the same principle that works for you when you have a vision. But here's the scary thing. You feel like you're missing out when you don't include the person that you're married to into your vision or your thoughts. That's what actually happens. That's what actually happens. And so this is what's really happening to Estee Lauder. And so here's where I have to really introduce you guys to my framework, because what's actually happening here is mental separation. Well, what do you mean by that? Mental separation. Mental separation, I like to talk about the 4 degrees of separation. First, you have mental separation. Mental separation is when your vision no longer aligns, or when you have a disagreement on something and you guys don't see eye to eye on a very particular issue. And so, for example, let's say how you manage money. If one person in the relationship doesn't know or agree on how the other person wants to manage money, and then you guys say, well, you do your thing, I'll do my thing, that is a mental separation. But here's the thing, because there are 4 degrees of separation that I want to talk about. The first, it starts with mental separation. Then it goes from mental separation to an emotional separation. When you have an emotional separation, it's because you have mentally now disengaged, because now subconsciously you're like, let him do his thing, and she's over there like she doesn't understand money or whatever it might be. So now emotionally, you both ain't messing with each other. You both feel some kind of way about that person, where you're now, and I'm talking about your significant other here, not just some random person, your significant other. And so you start having these emotions towards them, because the person who does not understand finances that well, or who thinks that let me say that again. If you think you understand finances better than the other person and you guys are separated, when that person blows their money, you're going to be pissed off. And emotionally, you're going to say in your head, that person is an idiot. And you're going to feel some kind of, what's the word? You're going to feel some kind of resentment towards them. And so when you start having resentment, that's emotionally now. So when you start building up that wall of resentment because they're not managing their money the same way, love can't live there. Love can never live where there's resentment. And this is what is caused by emotional separation. But where did it start? It started from an issue or something mentally that you didn't agree on, and then it went to an emotional separation, which is the second phase of the spheres or the degrees of separation. There you go. The third phase is physical separation. Physical separation is now that I'm emotionally pissed, right? And I have resentment towards this person. Now I don't even want to be around that person. And so now you start separating yourself. And now there are degrees and levels to this, y'all. But subconsciously, most times people are judging the other person because you want the best for that person. So when you start thinking about how they're eating and all of that, you're just like, man, I just wish they would do better. And so you start compounding these degrees of separation. It starts to get all the way to the last degree of separation, which is divorce. But this is what started to happen when she started to have her mental separation. This kind of got them to actually have a divorce. And so Estée Lauder and her husband got a divorce, Joseph. Now, here was her realization. During their 3 years apart, Estée achieved more business success. So they were apart for 3 years. So she started to have some business success, but something was missing. She started to feel like something was missing. They all do. But we're going to stay on Estée for right now. So she later said, success is not worth losing the one person who believes in me, or she said, believes in you before you even believed in yourself. Because Joseph believed in her and supported her even more than she believed in herself. And so she noticed that when she was out doing her own thing. And so this realization is the power that changed everything. So what happened after that? In 1942, they got remarried. So it was 3 years after they got remarried. But this was no simple reunion. They fundamentally changed their approach to business and marriage. They changed how they did things. And so Joseph wasn't just supporting her dream, he became an equal partner in it. Y'all, he became an equal partner in it. Let me just finish reading what I have here. So together, they built what became a $45 billion beauty empire with 25 prestigious brands. They have 25 other brands under them, y'all. And that all happened because they came back together. And it wasn't that Estée wasn't doing her thing, but she noticed that something was missing. And so let me see what I get into here, because if I didn't get into it, oh yeah, I do get into it. So I'm just gonna go to my notes because I was ready to start giving y'all some sauce, but I have it right here. So let's jump in. What if instead of your business pulling you apart from your spouse, it could become the very thing that brings you closer together? What if the same systems that make your business thrive could actually transform your marriage? And I know I wrote this in here because, like, when I have these revelations as to how they did it, I'm like, I gotta share this with everyone. That's where my passion comes from, because I feel like they've cracked the code, but they've hid it in books. And so I started reading a whole bunch of founders' biographies to find the code for doing business successfully with your spouse. And so that's a major part of my purpose, is and helping others do the same, which is why I'm so passionate about this. So here's the part and the formula, because I think the formula that they have is so significant that I just gotta share it now. Here's a technique that here's a technique from the Lauder's playbook. Role optimization. Role optimization. That's one of the main things that they did. So they stopped trying to fit into culture's expectation, and instead they created complementary roles based on their natural strengths. So what were some of the things and how they split it up? Well, Estée focused on products, creativity, and marketing, while Joseph managed operations, finance, and strategy. They made business decisions together. They created a shared vision, execution. They practiced united leadership. Do you know how powerful that is? Do you know how powerful that is? So she focused on what she was great at with products, creativity, and marketing. That's what she was great at. Guys, do you know that you're not great at everything? Do you accept that? Your partner, the person that you're married to, is probably best or better at something else that you're not good at. The problem is that, let me just be blunt, your leadership probably sucks. So because you have not identified the thing in your partner and how to use it to 10x exactly what you're doing right now. I'm gonna just say it and be honest. Your leadership probably sucks. And so Joseph, imagine this. He's managing operations, finance, and strategy. That's like a COO. One of the main things that stress people out is not having a good COO. And imagine you're already married to one. So we go out and pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to fill this seat for something that you already have, and you're sleeping right next to that person. But imagine actually making out with your COO. That's fun. I know I get to. I don't know about you guys, but anyway, it's not about me. But we gonna keep on going. But see, some of y'all might be thinking, my spouse doesn't understand my business, right? Like some of you thinking that right now. But that's exactly what made the Lauders successful. Joseph didn't need to be the beauty expert. He didn't need to. He brought a different set of strengths, a different set of skills to complement Estée's vision. I feel like there's a powerful moment right here, because most times we want to believe that the man is the visionary in the home. Yikes. What happens when the woman is the visionary in the home? Can you submit to your woman's and wife's vision? See, and this is one of the things that most people have such a hard time with, because, and I hope that this helps you, because submission is really being sub to the mission. Like, you got to break apart the word. Sub means to go under when for the mission to come above. So it's nobody losing. You're just going under for the sake of the mission. And if somebody has a vision and that mission is a bigger mission, why not just go sub to the mission so that you guys can execute the bigger picture and the bigger vision? If that's not your skill set, stop trying to bark when you're a cat. So here's the thing, and I wrote this in here. A strong marriage multiplies your effectiveness, but a troubled one divides it. I'm going to say that again. A strong marriage multiplies your effectiveness, but a troubled marriage, it divides it. The Lauders didn't add talents. They just came together. Of course, they hired other people, but they used what they already had. And so I think this is so beautiful. And so I wrote here, the Lauders left us with this warning. Don't wait until you lose it to value it. Woo! Powerful. Do not wait until you lose it to value it. It's right in front of you. Value it now. I was lucky enough to get a second chance. I was. But not everybody does. And your marriage deserves the same strategic thinking that you give your business. Super powerful. So today, guys, what I want to do is I want you guys to take the first step forward. I want you guys to take the first step forward. Here's something that you could do practically today. I want you to schedule a 30-minute meeting with your spouse. Schedule a 30-minute meeting with your spouse and discuss your shared visions and complementary roles. Like, if it's one takeaway that you could get from this podcast right now, is that I want you to have this shared vision that I want you to go discuss with your partner so that you guys could have and come up with complementary roles. This isn't about a grand gesture. It's about let me say that again. This isn't about a grand gesture or completely restructuring your life overnight. It's about one simple strategic step that costs nothing but could change everything. Could you guys do that? Now, what I want you to remember is that your business success is meaningless if you have no one to share it with. Estée Lauder learned this lesson through her loss. You can learn it through wisdom, sure. Build your empire together, not alone. And I know some people are going to be like, that's not for me. But this is more of a leadership thing. And so, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Next episode, we're going to be jumping deeper into Sam Walton and going into Sam Walton's story. And Sam Walton, if you don't know, he built Walmart. And so we're going to be going into Sam Walton's story because he has a very similar story. It's pretty crazy that so many founders have had this type of experience, and you and I get to learn from it so that we could run our marriage like a business. Catch you guys next week. Peace.